It started as just another rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was home alone, curled up on the couch with a blanket and a half-watched show playing in the background. The sound of the steady downpour outside matched the hum of the ceiling fan. It was one of those quiet, uneventful days, until a strange dripping sound from the kitchen pulled me from my comfort. I walked in to find a small puddle forming beneath the sink. It wasn't a huge leak, but it was enough to cause concern. My husband was away for work, as usual, and the plumber couldn't come until the next day. Feeling frustrated, I remembered that the delivery guy from the hardware store had mentioned in passing a while back that he used to be a handyman. Desperate and without many options, I called the number saved under Liam Deliveries. He picked up immediately, his voice familiar and warm. I explained the situation, and without hesitation, he offered to swing by after his last delivery. I didn't think much of it at the time, just someone helping out. When he arrived, he had that same easy smile and relaxed energy he always carried, like everything in life was just a little bit simpler for him. He wiped off his boots at the door and headed straight to the kitchen like he'd been there 100 times. At first, we made casual conversation. He worked under the sink, tossing out tools like it was second nature. I offered him a drink, and we chatted about his long day, my boring one, and everything in between. There was something oddly comforting about having company, even if it was someone I barely knew. We laughed more than I expected. The leak was fixed in under 30 minutes, but he didn't rush to leave. What started as a thank you drink turned into coffee, and then coffee turned into dinner, leftovers, nothing fancy. But somehow, it felt like more. There was a strange tension in the air, something unspoken but heavy. He noticed the framed photos on the shelf, the ones of my husband and I smiling on vacation. He didn't say anything about them, just looked a second longer than usual. The storm outside grew louder, the rain beating against the windows like it was trying to get in. The lights flickered once or twice, and I remember feeling oddly unsettled, but not because of the storm. The evening stretched on, the conversation deeper, a little more personal. He listened. Really listened. And I found myself saying things I hadn't told anyone in a long time. About feeling alone. About being tired of waiting for someone who was always too busy. When I looked at the clock, it was already past 10. He glanced outside, noticing the downpour hadn't let up. And that's when he said it. Maybe I should just wait it out here for a bit. My heart skipped. That moment hung in the air, full of weight and possibilities I hadn't prepared for. And from that point on, nothing was quite the same again. I nodded slowly when Liam said he'd wait out the rain. It didn't seem like a big deal, at least, I told myself that. We were just two people stuck inside during a storm. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't just about the weather. There was something in his eyes. A pause in his breath. And something in me had already shifted before I even realized it. I offered him a spare towel and pointed him toward the guest bathroom. While he dried off, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty coffee mug he'd used. My mind was racing. What was I doing? This man was practically a stranger, just someone who dropped off packages once a month and now happened to know how to fix a leak. But still, there was something about his presence that made the house feel less cold, less lonely. Maybe it was the way he listened, or maybe it was just the fact that someone was finally here, really here, not in a meeting halfway across the country or calling in between flights. When Liam returned, he had changed into a dry t-shirt from his car, and his damp hair clung slightly to his forehead. He looked around, clearly trying to read the room, trying to figure out how welcome he actually was. I offered to reheat the leftover pasta, and he accepted with a quiet thank you. As we sat back down, the conversation drifted into more personal waters. He told me about his life, how he had once worked as a plumber before switching to deliveries for more flexible hours. He talked about how things had gone wrong with his last relationship. Not dramatic, just distant. Quiet falling apart. I nodded, because I understood that too well. My husband and I weren't in crisis. We weren't screaming or fighting. We were just disconnected. A slow fade. I told Liam about the early days, how full of excitement everything had been. How I used to wait by the door when my husband came home. How I decorated this very living room hoping it would be the kind of space we'd grow old in. But somewhere along the way, he stopped noticing the small things. The way I did my hair. The way I stayed up late hoping he'd walk through the door. It wasn't anyone's fault. Life just moved too fast. Liam listened, and in that silence, something grew. Not romantic, not yet, but an understanding. And yet, behind all of it, there was an edge. A line I hadn't crossed, but was slowly creeping toward without fully realizing it. Outside, the storm raged on. And inside, something else was quietly building. The rain didn't stop. It just kept coming down harder, soaking the garden and echoing through the pipes like distant footsteps. Liam and I had moved to the living room, the lights dimmed and a quiet song playing in the background. There was a weird comfort in the silence between us, but also a weight neither of us addressed. We were sitting just far enough apart to keep things innocent, but close enough that it didn't feel that way. I kept telling myself this wasn't anything more than a coincidence. Just a kind stranger waiting out the storm. But something deeper was happening beneath the surface. And what made it worse was that I didn't try to stop it. I didn't pick up my phone to call my husband. I didn't even check the time. I just let the moment stretch, like I wanted it to. Liam leaned back, looking at a framed wedding photo on the shelf. I watched his eyes scan over it before he looked back at me. "You seem alone," he said, not as a question, but as an observation. It hit me harder than I expected. Not because it wasn't true, but because he saw it so clearly. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Because how do you admit that you're lonely in your own marriage? That you've grown so used to being strong and understanding, that now, when someone actually notices you, it shakes you to your core? My thoughts were interrupted by a notification on my phone. It was my husband. A simple text, "Still in meetings. Don't wait up." That was it. No question about my day, no check-in. Just distance, sent in a single line. Liam noticed the change in my face. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said quickly, but even I didn't believe it. "Just tired." He nodded but didn't press. That was the thing about him, he didn't push, but he understood. And somehow, that made it harder to resist letting my guard down. There was still a line between us, but it felt like we were both circling it now. Testing it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about a storm or a leak. It was about something I hadn't faced in a long time, how quietly things fall apart when no one is watching. And right there, in the middle of the night, with the rain pounding and tension thick in the room, I knew something was going to change. I just didn't know how far it would go. The clock ticked past midnight, and still, the storm hadn't let up. The thunder now rolled closer, like it was circling the house. Liam offered to help tidy up the dishes, and I didn't stop him. We moved around the kitchen slowly, like we were both aware of how close we were, how quiet the house had become. It was the kind of silence that made you hear your own thoughts too clearly, thoughts I wasn't ready to admit out loud. When his hand brushed mine while reaching for a plate, we both froze. It wasn't intentional, but we didn't pull away either. Just a second. Maybe two. But it felt longer. I looked up, and he looked back, eyes locked. He didn't smile. Neither did I. We both knew what was building, and no one was saying a word about it. Then the lights flickered again, once, twice, and went out completely. Everything turned black. I grabbed my phone and switched on the flashlight. Liam was already in the hallway, checking the fuse box. I followed, trying to steady my breath. The tension wasn't just emotional now, it was in the air, thick and pressing. When he turned around, the dim light hit his face in a way that made his expression unreadable. It's probably just the storm, he said. Nothing we can do till morning. I nodded slowly. You can stay in the guest room, I said, barely above a whisper. It came out before I thought it through. He paused for a second, just long enough to wonder what I really meant, then gave a small nod. We moved back to the living room, both avoiding eye contact, both pretending this wasn't unusual. I handed him a spare blanket, and he took it with a quiet, thanks. But as I turned to head toward the bedroom, his voice stopped me. Hey, he said softly, are you sure you're okay? I turned back to him, standing in the dim light, unsure of what to say. Because I wasn't okay. And he knew it. And maybe that's why he stayed, not because of the rain, not because of the leak, but because he saw right through me. I didn't answer him. I just stood there, caught between the hallway and the living room, between a life I knew and a moment I didn't understand yet. And in that exact second, everything hung in the air, unspoken, dangerous, and painfully real. I was still standing there, halfway between the living room and my bedroom, when the sound of tires crunching over wet gravel cut through the silence. My heart dropped. I rushed to the window and peered through the blinds, my breath catching as headlights swept across the living room wall. A car was pulling into the driveway, my husband's car. He wasn't supposed to be back until the weekend. I stared, frozen, as the engine shut off and the headlights disappeared. The clock on the wall read 12:42 a.m. He never came home this late. Never without a call. And never unannounced. Liam looked at me from the couch, his expression shifting instantly. He stood up slowly, the blanket falling from his hands, his voice low and unsure. Is that him? I nodded, my throat dry. Yes. We both knew how this looked. A strange man in the house. Lights out. Rain pouring. A marriage already stretched thin. Liam moved to grab his things, but there wasn't time. A key turned in the front door, and I backed away, my heart pounding. My husband stepped inside, shaking off his coat, completely unaware of the tension he'd walked into. He looked exhausted, distracted, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. Power's out, he asked, his voice casual. I swallowed hard and nodded. Yeah. Storm hit hard. His eyes landed on Liam, standing awkwardly near the hallway. The confusion on his face turned quickly into suspicion. Who's this? Before I could answer, Liam spoke up. I'm Liam. I came to deliver a part for the sink. She had a leak, I offered to fix it. I could see it all registering in my husband's mind, the timing, the late hour, the silence when he walked in. He didn't explode. He didn't shout. He just looked at me. Not with anger, but with something worse, cold disbelief. I didn't know I needed to call ahead to come to my own home, he said quietly. It wasn't like that, I replied, my voice shaking. The sink was leaking. The storm, you couldn't wait for a plumber? His tone was sharp now, but still controlled. You needed someone this badly? Liam took a step back, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe I should go. I wanted to stop him, but I didn't. I couldn't move. My husband walked past us both, straight into the kitchen, his silence loud enough to rattle the walls. He didn't say another word. Just opened the fridge like he was trying to erase what he saw. But I knew better. Something had broken in that moment, something we'd both been pretending wasn't already cracked. Liam quietly slipped out the door, leaving me standing alone in the dim light, my husband just a few feet away, but somehow farther than ever. And as I stood there, trying to catch my breath, the real question hit me hard, had I just pushed things over the edge, or was this storm always going to end this way? The house felt colder than ever as my husband stood in the kitchen, the weight of what had just happened settling heavily on all of us. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but the words caught in my throat. Liam was gone, the rain still pounding outside, and the tension between me and my husband thicker than the storm clouds overhead. Finally, he spoke, voice low and steady but full of pain. I don't understand why you didn't tell me. Why did you let someone else in? His eyes searched mine, trying to find answers I didn't have. I swallowed hard, feeling the raw truth in his words. I was lonely. I felt forgotten. You've been away so much, and when you're here, it's like I'm invisible. The admission hung in the air, heavy and real. He looked away for a moment, jaw clenched, then back at me. I didn't know you felt that way. There was a crack in his armor, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in a long time. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Maybe I thought everything was fine. I stepped closer, the years we'd spent together flashing through my mind, the love, the arguments, the distance. It's not just about attention. It's about connection. About feeling like we're still a team. For a moment, it felt like we could find a way back. Like maybe this storm wasn't just outside but inside us too, something to weather together. Then, as if breaking the fragile calm, the power flickered back on. The lights surged, illuminating the kitchen in harsh brightness. But with the light came a sound that made both of us freeze, a message alert on my husband's phone, loud and clear. He picked up, his face changing from weary to shocked. "What?" he muttered. Then his eyes widened as he scanned the screen. I leaned in, heart pounding. The message was from Liam. I didn't fix the leak after all. I came here for something else. I'm sorry. My husband's hands trembled as he showed me the message. He lied, he said quietly. There's more to this. My mind raced. What else could Liam have wanted? Why would he come here under false pretenses? Suddenly, the whole night took on a darker shade. Before I could respond, my husband's phone buzzed again, this time a call. He answered, his voice cold and sharp. What do you want? There was a pause, then a voice I didn't recognize spoke fast and low. You don't know everything. Liam's been involved in something dangerous. I warned you. My husband's eyes locked on mine. We need to talk. Now. Everything I thought I knew about the night, about Liam, about what was real, shifted in that moment. The leak, the storm, the lonely conversations, it was all just the surface of something much bigger. And as the rain finally began to ease outside, inside the house, I realized this was only the beginning of a different kind of storm. After that call ended, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. My husband looked at me, his eyes tired but steady. We need to figure out who Liam really is, and why he was here. It was clear this wasn't just about a simple leak or a stormy night. Something deeper had been hidden behind Liam's easy smile and helpful hands. Over the next few days, we started piecing together the truth. The hardware store where Liam worked had no record of him fixing plumbing before. A few neighbors remembered seeing him around, but not delivering packages. He'd used different names in past jobs. The friendly delivery guy was a carefully built mask, and the leak was just an excuse to get inside my house. It was unsettling, but also oddly freeing. Because it forced us to stop pretending everything was okay between us. The fear Liam brought made us confront the distance that had grown silently in our marriage, the loneliness, the unspoken frustrations, the moments when we were just going through the motions. We talked more honestly than we had in months, sharing feelings we'd buried beneath daily routines. It was hard, messy, but necessary. We realized that no stranger, no secret visitor, could fix what was broken inside us. Only we could do that, together. The leak itself got fixed by a real plumber the next day. The storm passed, leaving the world outside washed clean and quiet. And though the memory of that night stayed with us, the unexpected visitor, the unspoken tension, the phone call that changed everything, it also became a turning point. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still challenges ahead, days when the silence felt loud. But now, there was also space for understanding, for rebuilding, for being present. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes, the biggest leaks aren't the ones you can see or touch. They're the ones inside your heart and home, The cracks that let loneliness seep in unnoticed until it threatens to flood everything else. That night, the delivery guy who came to fix a leak, he didn't just bring a wrench. He brought truth. And even though it was hard to face, it was exactly what we needed to start healing. So if you're watching this and feeling alone, remember, it's okay to admit it. It's okay to ask for help. Sometimes, storms come to shake us awake. And if we listen closely, they might just lead us back to what matters most. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories that remind us all how complicated and how human life really is. 4.